Corey Bacon played for the Bengals in 76 and 77. And he was the one that we traded Charlie Joyner for to the Chargers to get Corey Bacon. Played for us in 76 and 77. He recorded 21 and a half sacks in 1976, but that was prior to the NFL officially recording individual sacks as a stat.
Right. They were tackles for loss back then. But, he was a wrecking ball that year. And, yeah, they gave up a lot with Charlie Joyner. I think the thought was they needed that defensive presence, somebody that could get after the quarterback and disrupt. And he did. Those were very good Bengal teams back then. And he kind of became the star that stood out, on the defensive front seven. He was here for 2 years, played well. In fact, there's a movement. A lot of guys on the boards and chats on the internet that feel a lot of people believe he should be in the Hall of Fame. Coy played for 4 different franchises. There was a little bit of a reason for that. He was a little bit of a lawyer in the locker room, at least in his younger days. I think he mellowed out, really got himself together later in his career and life. Unfortunately, he's passed away. But he was devastating that year. Nobody could stop him.
Yeah, and he's an Ohio boy from Ironton, Ohio, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
When he was done, he became very religious and became a prison guard and a counselor to prisoners.
Yep. So let's talk about – so Coy didn't make our top 5, but we had to talk about Coy because the 21 and a half sacks in 1976 is just amazing. So we're going to count down now from 5 to 1. And Tom, I'll let you take number 5 here, bud.
Ross Browner was known as probably the best player in college football. His senior year, led Notre Dame to a national championship. A lot of people thought he should win the Heisman, and he had a legitimate beef there. But very athletic, very quick, had a great move to the outside, great move to the inside, was part of that web defense in the late 70s that was so popular. And one thing a lot of people forget about in the loss of Super Bowl 16 is he had just an incredible game, double-digit tackles. He had a sack. He had 3 or 4 pressures on Montana, especially in the second half where the 49ers had trouble moving the ball. A lot of that had to do with Ross Browner. And he was a good Bengal for a number of years.
Yeah, he played for the Bengals for 9 years. Actually, out of the top 5 that we're going to be talking about, he's the one that had the least amount of years with the Bengals. These other 4 guys we'll talk about here in a minute have spent double-digit years, and a couple of them still going, to give you a hint. Ross Browner played for Notre Dame, right? And we had him on the show here last month, and he was an outstanding interview. He was fun. So let's go with number 4 right now. This will be the only non-defensive lineman that will make the list, but Reggie Williams, Tom.
Yeah, I'd just gotten out of kindergarten when Reggie joined the team, and I think it was in college when Reggie retired. But, just an absolute class act, class person. Is probably what he's known best for, and there's nothing wrong with that. But he played hard. He played smart. He made the guys around him feel better. And there were a number of years as the Bengals were struggling on the pass rush. He was their best alternative as a pass rusher. So he'd come to the outside, and again, he would come on the inside. He played on a number of teams, even though they were in a 3-4 in the 80s that didn't blitz a whole lot.
Right.
Still got an incredible number of sacks.
Yeah, 13 years with the Bengals. And actually, we have Reggie as a guest coming up here on the first Sunday in September. I think it's September 6th, something like that. But we will have Reggie on. We're going to be talking about that with him, Tom. That's good stuff. But number 4, Reggie Williams, longtime Bengal, the counselor. The next 2 guys are more recent, Tom. We're talking history, but we got Geno Atkins at 3 right now. Again, he's going into, I think, his 10th year with us. Or he just finished his 10th year, I think, whatever. 75 and a half sacks, Geno Atkins.
He and Carlos Dunlap both were part of that Fisher-Price defensive line that the Bengals nicknamed in 2010 when they were drafted. Not only is he going into his 10th year, one day he'll be going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And it's just as much an obvious choice as Ken Anderson and Ken Riley. But staying on Geno, just, even though he's not the largest defensive tackle in the league and hasn't, he can do it with speed. He can do it with a bull rush. He can do it with toughness, discipline. You can tell he studies hard during the week. But there's not anything he can't do against the pass rush, and he's had some devastating plays. I always remember the Thursday night game where he threw the Texans guard back into Deshaun Watson for a sack. But he's a disruptor, and the other thing about Geno is he's made guys on the line better because of him.
Yep, agree, absolutely, 100%. So next on the list is another teammate drafted the same year. Just talked about him slightly, but Carlos Dunlap, 81.5 sacks right now, and drafted the same year. This guy has been a steady, consistent player since he's been in the league for us, Tom.
He's underrated nationally. He's underrated, I think, by fans here. I know I got to know him. He ruined the Sugar Bowl when UC played Florida in the Sugar Bowl, and he had an absolute one-man wrecking crew that night. Got drafted in the second round with the Bengals. Had a little bit, of physical maturing to do, and it took about a year or two, and then it has just absolutely clicked. First-class person, plays hard, plays tough, gets to the quarterback either by reach or move or quickness and toughness. He's got it all. He's had an incredible career, and there's still more left in the tank.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, him and Geno both, man. I think, again, we'll move the number one here right now. Then we're going to kind of round back to Geno and Carlos here in a second. But, the number one right now on our list is Eddie Edwards with 83.5 sacks, played 11 years for the Bengals. Had a hell of a career, Tom.
Was a number 3 overall draft pick out of Miami. And again, he had it all. Teams were, had to look at Ross Browner. They had to worry more about Eddie Edwards because he was a brute. He was fast. He was tall. And he would just get after the passer. He went to the Pro Bowl one year. A lot of people don't talk about that. He was an All-Pro in '81 when they went to the Super Bowl. Had double-digit sacks. I believe he had 13 sacks in 1983, the year the Bengals had the number one defense in the league. Back in the early '80s for 4 or 5 years, there was not a better defensive lineman in the NFL than Eddie Edwards. Yeah,
and it's crazy. And a lot of these guys are talking about Ross Browner and Eddie Edwards that played in that late 70s era as well before they went into the 80s. I mean, the opportunity that these guys had back then to sack the quarterback wasn't as prevalent as it would be for a defender in today's NFL where everything's a pass, it seems like.
And it was tougher for Eddie, who was an elite pass rusher, because teams would work on him. He had 5 sacks against the team that plays on Lake Erie, the last game of the 1980 season. He had 5 sacks, 3 in the first half, and Rutigliano reconfigured the offense in the second half. He put the tight end on him to chip him, and then he put a running back on him. So Eddie was beating 3 guys, and he still sacked Brian Sipe 2 more times in the second half and hurried him, a bunch of other. He was just an absolute one-man wrecking crew that game.
And that's beautiful. That's twice on the show tonight. We talked about the city up north. David Fulcher had his first interception for a touchdown, and talking about Eddie Edwards and 80 against the city up north. But what's interesting, Tom, about this, and I think we're done with the video. Jamie, thank you. We've got 2 guys going into the season here that have a legitimate shot of passing Eddie Edwards. You've got Carlos that is 2 sacks behind the tying Eddie Edwards. And you got Geno that's not that. He'd have to have a pretty good year, but it's still feasible for Geno to also pass. It literally could happen if we get the season in this year, Tom. The number 1 and number 2 sack leader for Cincinnati Bengals in the history could be Carlos and Geno after this year.
And those 2 guys are really probably overall. You could put them and Tim Crumry, 2 are our top 2 defensive linemen in history.
Well, Tom, man, we appreciate it, man. Thanks. That was fun digging into the history of the sack masters of the Cincinnati Bengals, and we're all counting on hopefully Carlos and Geno at the end of the year being way ahead of Eddie Edwards in the sack league.
Fine. When we look back, if we're talking history next offseason, this defensive line this year is going to be the best defensive line in the history of the team.
Thanks a lot, buddy. We appreciate it.
Night.
Good day, buddy.